I was wrongfully accused of infidelity by my wife, lost access to my children, and spent years piecing my life back together. When she discovered I'd won the lottery, she tried to claim alimony through a lawsuit. I turned the situation around in a way she never anticipated. I'm a 34-year-old man, and my life was nearly perfect 3 years ago. I had a loving wife, Laura, 2 wonderful kids, Sophie 8 and Liam 5, and a stable career as a construction project supervisor. We weren't wealthy, but we were content. Everything seemed fine until Laura's behavior changed. She started staying out late after work, keeping her phone hidden and snapping at me over trivial matters. I initially thought it was just stress from her job as a nurse, which was demanding. But then, out of the blue, she accused me of being unfaithful. I was stunned. I'd been completely loyal since the day we married. I tried to calm her, but she wouldn't hear me out. She'd yell, cry, and storm out, leaving me to comfort the kids and explain why their mom was so upset. Things spiraled fast. One evening, Laura came home with a bruised eye, claiming I'd struck her during a fight. I was appalled. I'd never touched her violently, not once, but she stuck to her story, and soon the police were at my door. I was arrested, charged with domestic violence, and hit with a restraining order. I lost my job, my reputation, and worst of all, my children. The court awarded Laura full custody, limiting me to supervised visits once a month. I was shattered. For months, I lived in a daze, trying to understand how my life had unraveled. I hired an attorney, but Laura's accusations were convincing. She had photos of her bruises, messages from friends claiming I'd flirted with other women, and even a fabricated restraining order from a neighbor who said I'd been aggressive. The judge sided with her, and I was left with nothing. Still, I refused to give up. I moved into a small apartment, took whatever work I could find, and began rebuilding my life from the ground up. It was grueling, but I pushed forward for my kids. I wanted them to know their dad wasn't the villain Laura portrayed. 3 years later, I was finally getting back on my feet. I landed a solid job, saved enough to buy a modest home, and even started dating again. My relationship with Sophie and Liam was still rocky, but I was making progress. Then, unexpectedly, I won the lottery, a staggering $50 million. It was transformative. I cleared my debts, bought a new car, and set up trust funds for Sophie and Liam's education. I also founded a nonprofit to support other men falsely accused in custody disputes. That's when Laura reappeared. One evening, she showed up at my doorstep looking like she'd walked out of a drama scene, tears streaming down her face. She pleaded for forgiveness, claiming she'd made a horrible mistake. She said her hospital supervisor had convinced her I was unfaithful and pressured her into framing me to secure full custody so she could be with him. Now he'd abandoned her, and she was struggling financially. She wanted us to reconcile, to be a family again. I was floored. Part of me wanted to believe her, to let go of the past. But the part of me that had spent years rebuilding my broken life was enraged. How could she expect me to trust her after everything? Before I could respond, she dropped a bombshell. "I know about the lottery," she said, her voice shaky. "I'm entitled to half. We're still legally married. If you don't give me my share, I'll take you to court." Just like that, her true intentions were clear. Laura wasn't here to make amends. She was after the money. I wasn't going to let her destroy what I'd rebuilt, but I knew I had to be strategic to protect my kids, my future, and my peace of mind. Her threat lingered like a dark cloud. That night, I stayed calm, told her I'd consider it, and closed the door. Inside, I was furious. How could she demand half my winnings after ruining my life? I knew I couldn't face her head-on. She was too manipulative. I needed a smart plan. The next day, I called my attorney, Mark, who'd supported me through the divorce and knew the full story. When I explained Laura's demands, he sighed heavily. "This is tricky," he said. "If she can prove you were married when you won, she might have a legal claim. We need to uncover everything, her lies, her motives, anything that proves she doesn't deserve a cent." I spent weeks collecting evidence. I hired a private investigator to dig into Laura's past, and the findings were staggering. Her hospital supervisor, who she claimed had manipulated her, had been fired for stealing funds. Laura was complicit, helping him divert money from the hospital's charity fund. When he was caught, he implicated her, and she'd been quietly repaying the debt, which explained her financial struggles. The PI also found texts between Laura and her supervisor from the time she accused me of cheating. They discussed framing me to secure cues.